Hey everyone. I know everyone's been watching the TV, getting nervous, being thoughtful, dealing with this transition that we're dealing with here in the United States. If it's a transition at all, let's see if it returns more to status quo or not. But I've been watching all kinds of things like there's an Egyptologist by the name of Sarah Parkhack that put on Twitter how to take down Confederate monuments. That made it as a full feature in the British Daily Mail. I mean, it's pretty crazy. There's discussions of power and how one is supposed to be able to take it or not. And the thing that I find the most dispiriting and what I've noticed the most is a lot of quiet racism amongst friends, not family, and not even friends, but acquaintances, people out there, people who, you post something and they're like, oh, but, but they're looting. Or, but, they deserve this, but, why wouldn't you do this? And the amount of racism that's out there on social media that people are just putting out there without any sort of critical thought or any sort of self-reflexivity is rather stunning. And it makes me think of why we expect people to stand in line and be quiet and wait versus grab and get what they want, need, or feel they deserve. Or, I mean, as an Egyptologist, if Egypt shows us anything, it is that there is a human, hominid, higher ape, human mammal desire for order. And that desire for order comes into tension with our desire for fairness. And there are interesting studies about this with the human animal and with other animals about fairness being incredibly powerful. That people feel if something isn't fair, then they get very upset, they speak out, they'll ostracize, they'll punish in some way. Fairness is very, very important. But order within our patriarchal complex society seems to always win out, so that when you see people marching, protesting, and there are some bad actors, and it's not even some, I mean, Los Angeles, you see an entire disenfranchised population. It's like, wait, free stuff from that evil corporation over there, I'm in, show me where to go. And people are like, oh, but the looting, how could you? And there is this lack of interest, complete lack of interest in trying to put yourself into their shoes, into trying to feel like what it would be like to be so completely on the outside of society. I think one of the reasons it scares us so much is because it's a group of people that are not voting, see no point in voting, realize they're disenfranchised, and are like, whatever, and are not playing within the system. And that people who are saying, oh, but they're looting, are demanding that you play within the system. That you, well, let me stop it there and read you some from ancient Egyptian texts, because, this is what we do. So staying within the system, what do I mean by that? So I'm reading now from this William Kelly Simpson volume. I'm reading from the instructions of, the Prophecies of Nefertiti, Middle Kingdom text. And we have here, a man's possessions are taken from him and given to an outsider. This is a text talking about horrific things that are happening to people and how a great king will come and solve everything for him. Another section says, the land is diminished, though its controllers are many. He who is rich in servants is despoiled. We have, I show you the land in calamity. The weak-armed now possesses an arm. The men salute one who used to do the saluting. Another section, the poor man will achieve wealth, while the great lady will beg to exist. And then the text goes on with, a king of the south will come. His name will be an Ameni, and it goes on and on. and how this authority, this order, will put everything that is meant to be in its place in its place. So the Egyptians were openly making the deal to have order instead of fairness, that there's not going to be equitable distribution, and no complex society has equitable distribution. It doesn't work, and when people have tried it, we know that it doesn't work. Communism doesn't work. People get to keep what they work for, but it is but then that's part of fairness. That's a different conversation. I'm going to leave that there. But it is not surprising to me that people would use, in this country, Egyptian symbols like obelisks, pyramids on our money, obelisks on Confederate monuments, not just in Birmingham, but in other places as well, that they would use those symbols as a means of keeping that social order, of keeping people in their place. That you're not supposed to have rage. You're not supposed to get angry. You're supposed to play by the rules. You're supposed to do everything right. So I think the part that is, there are two things that are so threatening to us when we see people looting and taking. One is that you can see that there are a part of people, there's a part of society that is not enfranchised into society at all. So they just don't participate. They don't have bank accounts. They're not voting. They're not educated, and they're on the fringes of society, and they have little to lose. And if those things are turned around in our eyes, then it's very problematic. But think of what I just read in this book, that the poor person gets the stuff and the great lady is begging to exist, and the weak-armed one is now saluting the strong-armed one. In some ways, these are also our American ideals, that you have this equality, that the poor can tell people what to do, or it's like what Jesus said, that the rich man that has as great a chance of getting into heaven as the fat man through the eye of a needle, right? It's so interesting the way if you go back to your Gospels, and please do that and read the words of Jesus, they are in association with this looting, with this rage, with going into the temple, with disrupting the moneylenders, with looking in the corporations and just sweeping all of this stuff away, with using that rage to change something. It's the most frightening part of what Jesus does, that social upheaval, that demand that you leave all of your belongings behind and you follow him, that you're not into maintaining your social status and your social place. And how interesting that we have co-opted this religion to be one of maintaining social order and maintaining social place against all of these people who are after fairness and enfranchisement. Now, I am not, for those of you that are potentially writing the comments, and I'm not looking right now, trying to, did I say fat camel? Shit, Renard, did I? Oh dear. Fat man in the eye of the needle. Did I say fat camel? Oh God, if I did, I apologize. Oh crap, now where was I? Oh, for those of you that are angry with me, because there's so much anger out there on the social media about people who are trying to see looting from the perspective of the looter, as if it is so evil, it is so wrong, it is so bad to think of why somebody who was full of rage at their lot in life would try to take something back from something that has been over generations systematically stolen from them. I mean, I get it. I'm not saying that I would necessarily go out and loot or that it's right, but if you weren't paid a living wage, you had no benefits, you had no social safety net, you knew that even if you tried to vote, you would have a very hard time of it, and you have no place in society, what are you supposed to do? Where else are you supposed to go? And it reminds me of another text that you can find in this book that perfectly fits what I'm talking about, and that is called The Eloquent Peasant. Very famous text for Egyptologists. Maybe a lot of you don't know about it, but you can find translations online. I'm not going to read passages from the text, but I'll explain you more or less what The Eloquent Peasant is and how it is the most insidious and controlling and brilliant text all at the same time. In The Eloquent Peasant, this guy gets his stuff stolen by a man with more social power than him. And the man trumps up these charges and makes it seem like the poor man is the one that is, the peasant, is the one that is doing what he should not be doing. And it all gets ramped up and it gets up to the court. And then finally they're standing in front of no less than the king, and everyone is making their case. And the eloquent peasant knows that he can't blow shit up. He knows he has to play by the rules. He is put into this horrific situation in which he has to plead for his livelihood by using poetry at court, by being clever, by being witty, by being flowery, by being more flowery than the other guy. He has to play by the rules. He cannot show rage. He cannot show anger. He cannot show how much the injustice of the system is driving him nuts. He has to stand there and give speech after speech after speech, and they make him do it again. They make him dance. They make him continually explain why this is wrong in an eloquent way. And then finally, after the poor dude must be exhausted and has given speech after speech, they're like, okay, you're right. The rich man should not have done this to you. The poor man, you may keep your stuff. But that right there is complex society of the haves and the have-nots in a text. And you see that if he had shown rage, if he had buckled once, if he had let them see how much they make him angry, then immediately they would have been like, you see? Do you see? It seems like you are in need of a firm hand. You have an anger management problem, which makes me think of what my ex-husband always used to say to me when I would, and this is personal, but it's super interesting and it makes sense. In a patriarchal society, you know that only certain people are allowed to show their rage. For those of you that grew up in alcoholic households, you know that it's the man of the castle that gets to show his rage and that everyone else has to deal with it. And if anyone else shows their rage, oh no. Or the household of an abuser, you know that it's the person who, there is one person in the house that gets to be rageful, and then other people do not. And it's the same in society there. And we understand this is the human mammal, that there are some people that get to be rageful and other people who do not. So in a patriarchal complex society, the men get to be rageful and the white men get to be rageful, and that makes us feel safe. But if the black man gets rageful, or God forbid, a woman of color or a white women can be rageful, but we'll leave that too. But if a woman gets rageful versus a man, then we have a problem. So in my personal situation with my ex-husband, I remember I would get extraordinarily rageful about all kinds of circumstances that I will not go into right now. But, and I would just lose it because there was no other recourse but to just show my rage, and it never worked. I was always told I had an anger management problem, and it was always like, oh no. And think of how you feel when your child, I have a 10-year-old, when your child shows their rage at you and you're like, who do you think you are, little child? I am the boss. And you impose your social system of hierarchy on that child. Well, that is what we are doing in the United States of America today by imposing our hierarchy on who deserves to be angry and rageful and who does not. And I totally get it. If for generations, and I don't know what it's like, I'm some white tall chick, what the hell do I know? But if for generations I'm not allowed to vote, I'm disenfranchised, I don't have a living wage, the corporations are raping and pillaging, and all of a sudden they're open for business for me to go in and get a pair of Nike shoes. I mean, I don't think that a lot of these people even freaking care, I almost said the other one, care about the shoes. I think they care about the rage. This is an act of disobedience. This is an act of showing people what they feel. And now, the peaceful protesters, oh my God, I know you guys are dealing with this, right? And I know that you're dealing with the different factions in the protests, and you have people on the right who are actually trying to create trouble, people on the left who are actually trying to create trouble in the lines against the police. But note how in these confrontations, and I just saw in Los Angeles yesterday, all these people standing before the police, waiting patiently to be arrested, to have their plastic ties put around their hands so they could be put onto a bus, so they could be brought to the Jackie Robinson Stadium that is close to UCLA campus on the Veterans Administration land. And this is the way we do it? That you have to, without rage, without anger, kneeling down, quietly and submissive, wait for the hierarchy to come and put you into custody, load you onto their bus, and that is the way we have to do it? So, but isn't it interesting that we all inherently know as a human mammal how much we have to tamp down our anger, how much we cannot show that, or else immediately the finger comes out and it's like, see, you need the firm hand. You need to have somebody in control of you. You need daddy looking out for you. You have an anger management problem. You need to be incarcerated. Those people need to have harsher rules. You women are going to turn into angry, crazy feminists and get all hormonal and shit, and we can't handle it. And so the hierarchy pushes us all down again. So it's all about social place. It's all about patronage. It's all about hierarchies. It's all about power. It makes me think we human animals are all like a bunch of higher apes, gorillas or chimpanzees. I'm obsessed with gorillas and chimpanzees and looking at social order. I like to see human beings as what they are, and we are animals, big brains and all. But if you look at this mammal type, this higher ape, and you see who's allowed to get angry in a gorilla troop, who's allowed to get angry in a chimpanzee troop, it's interesting that the more hierarchical, that would be the gorilla troop, only very few are allowed to get angry. You also have a harem system in the gorilla troop, but only the big grayback is allowed to show rage. And if other people show rage, make eye contact with the big grayback, oh, there is hell to pay, and there will be some sort of crackdown. And there is a strong hierarchical system maintained. Amongst chimpanzees, either pygmy or bonobo, bonobo we're not going to talk about because for them it's all sex, but let's go with the pygmy chimps. But there's more rage shown, and there's more anger shown by males and females because there's a more distributed power within society. But still there's graybacks within chimp communities, and there are some that are allowed to show all kinds of anger, and they beat their chests and all of this stuff, and then everyone else has to tamp down, lower their eyes, put their hands on their chests, and kind of go like, humans do this too. You see this all the time with humans. When people realize that they've pushed it too far in the hierarchy, and they're going to get cracked down on by somebody in power, and they made eye contact and they yelled, and they have to go, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. We are higher apes, you know. And if you look at chimpanzees, they do the same things with each other. So for me, this is basics of power. And it is, again, fairness versus order. And it seems that we human beings, so many of us, a good half or more from my social media anecdotal perusal, seem to be choosing order, authoritarianism, the strong hand of our Father, versus what is fair, what is right, what is equitable, and what is actually moral and good. Again, it is no surprise that Egyptian symbols were used by the Confederacy and post-Jim Crow Confederacy, or post-Confederacy Jim Crow system in the South to keep people in their place. That people looked at that obelisk in Birmingham, Louisiana, New Orleans, and they knew immediately what it meant. And they knew what side of society people were on. And now if I go back to some of these texts, where the Egyptians are talking about why people, these texts that I read to you are why people need a king. This is why you need a king. Because if riches come to you by theft, they will not spend the night with you. As soon as day breaks, they will not be in your household. Although their places can be seen, they are not there. It is all saying, you better keep it together. You better not steal from the rich person. You better not try to upend society. If you do, it's going to be bad for you. And this is why all of us need to subsume our individual will or our desire for fairness in favor of having a king. So this is what I see when it's a strange thing for an Egyptologist. When I see people on social media saying, but they're looting, but the looting. I'm like, okay, so you're using the same propaganda that the ancient Egyptians used thousands of years ago to tell everybody in society why they needed a king in control of them. And I think I'll leave it there because I might go into some more overt political screeds, and you guys can do that for me in the comments. But one last point that is very interesting. Since I've started doing these Facebook Lives and YouTube videos, I have noticed that my social media, which has been built up by Discovery Channel, National Geographic shows, my publishing, my social media numbers have, I keep getting new followers, but my number keeps going just a little bit down. Now, I don't care about my number, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this from a sociological perspective of counting who's a racist and who's not, who can handle seeing what's happening in society and looking at it with a jaundiced, cold-eyed stare, and who wants to look away and keep their status quo and keep their power and keep their place and kneel down before their king. But I am noticing a whole shit ton of people who are unfollowing and cannot handle opinions or ideas that maybe we need to be more fair and equitable in this society, and would rather bow down in front of that king. And to see people posting the things that I see on social media these days, it makes me crazy. And I know it makes a lot of you crazy, but I know there are probably a lot of you watching this who are like, but they shouldn't take my stuff. But they're looting. And this is not what I am saying. I'm not saying they're there to take your stuff. But I am saying, as the white entitled chick that I am, that we all need to try to see this from the perspective of people who have been purposefully and systematically downtrodden for so long, and whose voices have not been heard, and who, like the eloquent goddamn peasant in my Egyptian text, have had to stand before power and bow their head and dance. And I'm done with it. So what should we call this one? The screed of anger? I don't know. You guys can try to name it for me. I'll be back. But hang tight out there. Watch the authoritarianism crack down. Watch it. Watch it before your eyes. Be careful. See what you can do about it. Start speaking up, because that is what is happening now. And more than half of the population will be more than happy to see that happen. I am done. Till next time. Ciao.